Yes, legends, we're back for another episode. This is 26 Podcast. I'm your host, Rogan McGeorge. Welcome to 26 Podcast. This is the first time that I'm able to say this, but I have got three Cambridge United fans in the room. I've got my brother, Scott McGeorge. How are you, Scotty?
Yeah, really good.
Scotty's helping me out today with a podcast, and I've got ex-Man.U and Cambridge United. We'll get to the other clubs, but they're the most important ones. Luke Chadwick, how are you, Chads?
Yeah, all good, thanks, mate. All good.
Thanks a lot for joining us today, mate. I do appreciate your time. I don't know how much you knew about this because we just kind of tied it up with James and Johnny and you didn't really get a say. So thanks for taking the time to speak to us today, mate.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Always great to catch up with you boys.
Quality. We were talking about how we were going to do this podcast, and I know Scotty is dead keen to talk to you because you and Scotty were both playing against each other in Cambridge when you were younger, so I want to hear all about it. He says that he was way better than you.
He's probably right.
Who was it you played for locally?
So I was a team called Eternit Colts based in Melbourne. Big factory in Meldrup took over the sponsorship of the club, so we were Eternit Colts. So we weren't... we didn't always win the league. There was always some good teams about, Scottish team obviously, but it was obviously really enjoyable playing as a kid with all my mates. Great days, great days.
Was that the team that you played in a final, Eternit and
No,
Crusade?
it was the Colts League. Played against Chadders many times, as he said. Eternit, he was unstoppable. They were a solid side, but whether it was the big goals, why he scored so many goals, I don't know. But no, he's electric pace, brilliant player. And there was one occasion we had a pretty good side. I played for Chesterton Community College. Chadders was at East School, Melbourne. We'd beaten the likes, I think it was Trumpington, Lee Johnson was in that team, Louis Farrington, some terrific local players, and we'd beat them in the semi-finals. Gary Johnson was watching, and we thought Melbourne in the final on Trumpington Road on the Cambridge Stadium. And I think I sort of said to my teammates, if we can stop Chadwick, I think we've got this, but... I think it was about 6-2 and Chadder scored 5 and that was the end of that story. So he was different class, so quick, scored so many goals, and even looking back, the name Chadwick just gave you a chill down your spine if you were playing them on a Sunday morning.
When you played at that age, Chads, did you know straight away that you were talented and found it easy as such at that level, like Colts level?
I think when I first started playing, when we started playing, Scott, it was straight into 11-a-side on a full-size pitch with full-size goals. And I remember I was 8 years old playing, and I was freakishly fast as a child. I wouldn't say I was technically that much better than anyone else, but my teammates used to just whack it over the defenders' heads. I'd chase after it, put it in a massive goal, past a tiny goalkeeper, and got a huge amount of success in them early days, which gave me a lot of confidence. I think as I went up into the Colts League, under 10s, under 11s, under 12s, I used to score a lot of goals. And like Scotty said, that was because I was so fast. I'd just always play on the centre-half shoulder and get loads of chances, miss a fair few, but score a fair few as well. And I think it was them really successful early experiences in football that gave me a huge amount of confidence, which allowed me to have a career in the game. I don't know, obviously, Cambridge is probably not a real hotbed of football in terms of a lot of people that I was playing against I was better than. So if I didn't have that original success in them early days that I got, I don't know if I grew up somewhere like central London where there was loads of good players back then. I'm not sure if I would have had the same career that I did, but growing up being so successful, like I say, gave me so much confidence. And I never, sort of from the age of 12, 13, it was my dream to become a professional footballer, but I never really had any doubt in my mind that I'd do that, not in a sort of arrogant way or anything like that. It was because I was quite a lot better than the majority that I played with within the local area.
And when you're playing at that age, I know that you work at the Football Fun Factory, which we're going to touch on a little bit later on in more detail, but how important was it when you were growing up for kids to just enjoy it? Because I work in an academy environment now and I absolutely love it. But one thing that I am always trying to get across to the players, as much as development and getting better and learning, is that the most important thing is to enjoy it. As an player who's played at the very top level, how important is it for, say, a 9-year-old to just enjoy it?
Yeah, I think whatever age that you're playing at, enjoyment is paramount. I think I spoke about them early successes that I had as a child playing football. I would never have had them if I didn't enjoy it. And when I first went to my first training sessions, when I went to Saturday morning football at Meldreth Primary School, and my first sessions at Melbourne Tigers with the young ages, I fell in love with the game because the coaches made it so much fun. It was so enjoyable. I don't remember any tactical or technical information I was given back then, but I remember I absolutely loved running around with my friends, chasing the ball about, and whenever I had plenty of challenges throughout my career, as every footballer does. It doesn't go well all the time, but the reason that I still felt so much love for football and still love it now, because I'd always go back to them early days of why I started playing football. I didn't start playing football because I thought I might be a professional footballer. I started playing football because I absolutely loved it, and I loved running around playing with my mates. And I always go back to that, and I always speak to young people, my own children, about it, and said, you're not in the game to become a professional footballer. That's why no one starts playing football. You start playing football because it's something you just enjoy and you develop a love for. And if you're lucky enough, which I was lucky enough to have a career in the football, absolutely brilliant. But football's for everyone, and there's so much love for it because of the positive early experiences that you can get in the game.
It can be forgotten to just enjoy it. So Scotty, you played quite a big part in his career when he was knocking about 5 past your team, enjoying it.
Yeah, that's why I enjoyed it, because we scored 6 past Scottish team in that cup final.
I was a victim on many times. But yeah, we Cambridge United supporters, Chadders, like obviously you played, but you know, first and foremost you were a supporter back in them glory days with like Chris Turner, John Beck, etc. How do you look back on watching back then, and was there a player at Cambridge United that you sort of aspired to be or modelled yourself on as such?
There was one player during that time that I fell in love with. His name was Gary Clayton. He was like a hard-working midfielder. Didn't always start the game, sometimes on the bench. But when I was about 9 years old, my old man got me a signed photo from him, and it said, "To Luke, best wishes, Gary Clayton." It was the best present that I'd ever had. I was absolutely buzzing with it. Somehow it got lost in transition when I was moving from place to place. But when I worked at Cambridge United, the guys there, Dave Matthew Jones, managed to get me another one and replaced it. So I've still got that hanging on the wall today. But then, again, I talk about playing football, but I remember my old man took me to my first game when I was about 6 years old. First time up the Abbey. I'd never experienced anything like it before in my life, sort of going into the stadium, being so close to the players, smelling the turf, feeling the atmosphere, and that absolutely blew my mind. There was the likes of, you mentioned him earlier, Laurie Ryan, David Crown, George Riley, Lindsay Smith, like they were the names that were playing then. And Cambridge United is a massive reason why I developed such a love for football, and sort of growing up, sort of when I got 7, 8, 9 years old, it was probably the most successful period in the club's history where they put the cup runs together, went shooting through all the leagues. So yeah, I'm incredibly grateful for Cambridge United, because again, they're another reason why I love football so much.
I've recently been on a UK tour, and I went to a couple of top flight games, and don't get me wrong, it was unbelievable. So I went to a Man City game against Red Star in the Champions League, went to Brighton Man.U in the Premier League, and Villa versus Chelsea. And I said this to Scotty, it was brilliant, of course, going to top flight games of that quality, but when I come back and went to Derby County away watching Cambridge United, it's a different feeling, isn't it? Watching your team to any other team in the world, no matter what standard it is, it's a special feeling when it's your club, essentially.
Oh, 100%. It's a whole sort of walking down Newmarket Road, seeing all the crowd going in, looking for a car parking space, trying to park somewhere. But it was so, like, I remember the days like they were yesterday, going to the Abbey, and it seems so much different today when you go up there without the sort of the allotment road, the standing where the away fans used to stand. It looks very different, but it's got so much history to me, and I'm sure you guys as well. When you go back to that stadium, it's something very, very special.
You can't find a parking spot now, Chadders.
I know, yeah, it's a nightmare, isn't it? They don't even let me in the car park either.
That's saying something.
It is. It's a special place, but I need to see a win before I go back. I'm going to the Shrewsbury game on Saturday, but when I come back in 2019, I've not seen Cambridge win for about 5.5 years now. So I need a win. I'm desperate for a win.
You need to stay away. You're the unlucky home.
When you were playing as a youngster, Chads, and you're obviously enjoying yourself, one of the best players locally in Cambridge, at what age did you start to get interest or scouts, showing an interest in you?
Yes, so probably about 12, 13, I'd sort of have some clubs phone up my house and that sort of thing. I went on trial. First team I went on trial with was Cambridge United. I went to their School of Excellence. They used to train at Bottisham Village College in the gymnasium area, and I went there for 3 weeks, and they didn't want me. They ended up saying, "Hey, there's no need for you to come back," which obviously broke my heart as a massive Cambridge fan there. Then went to Ipswich and Norwich, went on trials there. They were interested in signing me, but the distance of getting there, and my mum didn't drive at the time, it was something that I would not be able to do. I played a lot of games for a team called East Anglia Boys, which was sort of an area team that used to go off on tours for different countries, which was an incredible experience. I went to Denmark, I went to Belgium, even went out to America and played tournaments out there. And the guy that ran that was also working at Arsenal, and I ended up signing for Arsenal as an under-13 player in their School of Excellence, which meant training at Highbury every Wednesday night, I think it was. There was an indoor area called the JVC Centre at Highbury where I'd go there and then play for them on a Sunday. And to be honest with you, I didn't really like it. I was so sort of quiet and shy, introverted as a kid, and I didn't like mixing with other people really, and I didn't like going off to play with all these better players at Arsenal because I wouldn't get the same joy that I get with in my grassroots teams and that sort of thing. And a lot of Wednesday evenings I used to tell my mum, "I've got a stomachache, mum, I can't go to training tonight," and made up every excuse under the book. But I loved the games. I loved playing there on a Sunday. We used to go to London Colney, where next door to where they train now. We used to play there. But on a Saturday is where I played for the Cambridge schools team, like the district team, and that's where I was getting a huge amount of success, scoring a lot of goals and sort of getting more interest from professional football clubs. So after my year at Arsenal, I got to the age of 14, and back then 14 was the age where you could sort of officially sign for a club. You'd sign a schoolboy form that took you up to 16, and then the club would decide whether they wanted to take you on the YTS scheme. And it was around this time where I was scoring a lot of goals for Cambridge schools, and I had a game for the county team, Cambridgeshire, away against Essex, who are obviously a very good team. And my manager, Richard Smith at the time, the guy who took the Cambridge schools team for many, many years, told me that there's a Man United scout coming to watch you tonight. And Man United was always a team that I followed in the Premier League or sort of Division 1 because of the young players that, that come through there. And I remember playing in the game thinking, imagine if the scout says that you're good enough and you're going to go to Man United. And we played the game, we got beat 6-1, got absolutely battered, but I scored the one. And then after the game, the guy said to you, Manchester United want to contact you. They want to speak to you about potentially going up for a trial. And then that was the season that I went up for my first trial and went up to Manchester.
How old were you at that time when you played that game?
I was 14. I think it was an under-15s county fixture that I was playing in that night.
How do you handle that as a 14-year-old, knowing that the biggest club in the world arguably are watching you?
Yeah, it was a strange feeling. I think it's that sort of innocence of youth sort of thing. You're just absolutely buzzing about it. I remember thinking there was a little bit more on the game, but I always knew it was going to be a really hard game because Essex traditionally are very good, got some really good players. But I thought if I just run around as much as I can and sort of see what happens. And I remember probably about 3-4 days after that, got a letter in the post and with the Man United headed notepaper inviting me up for the school half term to go up and stay there for a week as a trial. And I was absolutely buzzing at the time. But then as the day gets closer and closer, starting to feel real sort of anxiety about it and thinking I'm going to be away. I was a real mummy's boy. I didn't like being away from home very much. I thinking, how am I going to cope with this and that? And I got on the train to go up there. My mum dropped me at Meldrift train station. I had to get the train from Meldrift to Cambridge, Cambridge to Ely, then Ely to Manchester. I don't think my mum thought I'd be able to cope with that, getting on the right trains. But it was something that I was really excited but incredibly anxious about as well.
Yeah, and so I'm just going to rewind a bit as well on a point there. I've got like my coach's hat on here, Chads. When I chat to academy players coming up that are aspiring, there was a moment in that story where you're at a hall in Bottersham and Cambridge United are saying no need for you to come back, and then within a matter of time you're training at Arsenal. So there's a little message in there as well that goes, just because one person's opinion or one club isn't quite interested, it doesn't really tell the full story. And I'm sure you'll agree, football is a game of opinions, and it doesn't always work out as a straight journey. There's little bumps in the road.
Oh, 100%. I think that could be said for anyone who's been on a footballing journey, whether they've been successful and got to where they wanted to get to, if they haven't made it there. There's so much sort of luck and stuff that comes into it as well, but there's always going to be bumps in the road, as it were, and it's sort of like anything in life, how you deal with them challenging times, which helps you. I mean, I was only 10, 11 years old when Cambridge sort of said that they didn't want me at that time, and it was really disappointing at the time, but still had belief in myself that I could still go and score goals and play football somewhere else. So I think it is so important to recognise that I don't think there's barely any footballer. You even look at sort of Messi and the challenges that he went through in terms of growing and getting to a size where he could compete against players his own age. So there's no straight line for anyone. There's no straight line for success in anything that you choose to do. So there's always going to be dips in the road, and it's how you sort of deal with them dips, them challenges, which really shape your future and what you can do with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And when you've made it on the train, I'm assuming you did make it, to Manchester, how did the trial go that week?
Yeah, it was, like, as you can imagine, an amazing experience. I remember sort of getting off the train and being told that there'd be someone to collect me at the other end, and the second that one of the coaches there was to pick us up, and felt at ease immediately how sort of friendly, how enthusiastic it was. I can't explain the environment and culture that I went into at the club at that time, and for the sake of the week that I was there, I fell in love with it. I was desperate to be part of it, because the way that you were made to feel, everyone was so pleased to see you. Everyone somehow knew who you were. It was something that they put so much effort into, and it was, like I say, the most mind-blowing week of my life, really, in terms of just being around that football club, where I had that sort of anxiety of going to Arsenal. It's nothing against Arsenal, they're an incredible football club, but I never felt that same warmth and that same friendliness that I felt from the second that I walked through the door at Manchester United and met the people involved there.
Was Sir Alex involved, Chadders? Like, when you obviously got the YTS, he was quite involved, wasn't he? Like, even with the youth team players, being such a sort of prestigious first team manager, he was quite involved with what happened at youth level.
Oh, I've never, like, the most incredible bloke I've ever met in my life, in terms of the detail that he went into, in terms of knowing and having relationships with everyone. When I went up there on that 1 week trial before the game, where the week finished with a game at Littleton Road, we were playing friendly against Nottingham Forest, and we were getting our kit on and whatnot ready for the game. And then the coach of our age group, our under 15 coach, said, the gaffer's here to say hello. And Alex Ferguson walked in the dressing room as a 14-year-old lad. You can imagine someone who'd only seen on the TV before. It was incredible, and he just was so warm in the way that he spoke. The only things I'd seen of him before was some fearsome manager on the side of the football pitch shouting and bawling and whatnot. But the way that he spoke to us and saying like what Manchester United was and what it means to be part of Manchester United, it was so inspiring. And I played in the game against Nottingham Forest, done quite well, scored a couple of goals, got back on the minibus, back to Manchester Piccadilly, 3 or 4 trains home, took me about 5 hours. Mum picked me back up from Meldriff train station, got in the car, and she said to me, "Oh, Alex Ferguson phoned me up this afternoon." I'm thinking, well, she's on a wind-up here. There's no way in the world Alex Ferguson. But he'd actually phoned her up after the game saying, like, we'd love your son to sign for us. And it was like, once you hear that, then there's only one place you're going to go. And it was like, I've been at the club in and around the first team at Carrington having dinner, and there was a group of under 10, under 11, under 12 academy players in the canteen as well. And the manager would come in and he'd know every single one of their names, know something about them, know their parents' names, and the detail that he'd go into to make people feel special, to make them feel part of the football club, regardless of who that was, whether it's an academy player, the kit man, the lady that's cooking the dinners. He made everyone feel part of what he was doing. And like in any organisation, if you've got everyone pulling together in the same direction, then you tend to get huge success. Exactly what he done at the club.
It makes a mockery of people that think that they're too good to say hello to people and haven't even achieved a quarter of what Sir Alex achieved. If he's at the top of the game and he can treat everyone in that way, that for me is a good example that could be set to anybody, anywhere, in any industry.
Everything that we do in life is around relationships. You can't do anything by yourself. And I think if you've got a skill of building relationships and a skill of making people buy in to what the overall goal is and what's trying to be achieved, then again, that's where success comes from. And I think I look at Sir Alex in terms of the lessons or the life lessons that I've learned from him, and probably none of them are football skills. It was everything of what he was or is as a human being and as a man, and the way that he communicates a message, the way that he cares about those that are working under him. And it's them sort of qualities that he had in abundance which made Manchester United the strength and the force that it was for the years that he was in charge.
How did you find that transition, Chad? It's obviously being from a sort of sleepy village, Cambridgeshire village, and then going to the bright lights of Manchester, and then it's a massive jump playing, you know, like the Colts football, the schools football, and then, you know, going to Manchester United, being surrounded by, you know, sort of stars, as it were, and Sir Alex. Did you cope well with being in that environment, or was it a little bit tricky at the start?
Yeah, I think in them early days, I was obviously still at school. So for the first sort of 18 months, I was going up to Manchester on a weekend. So I'd finish school early on a Friday, then get the train up to Manchester, sit on the bench for the A or the B team, which it was back then, maybe get a few minutes, then play for my age group team on the Sunday, then come back Sunday night, go back to school on Monday. When I then finished school, I remember like it was yesterday, I moved up there. My dad drove me up there to start my new life in Manchester the day after my prom at Melbourne Village College. So I was up early the next morning, drove up to Manchester full of sort of excitement for the future, but trepidation. Like you say, I'm moving from a tiny little village where the most exciting thing that goes on is the church fete every year to going up to living in this terraced house in Salford on Littleton Road. It looked exactly the same as Coronation Street that I used to watch on the telly, and it was a completely different life. And the first 2 weeks I was really struggling. I was on the phone to my mum every night crying my eyes out saying I want to come home. I was out my comfort zone. I was living with another lad in a little bedroom. I was playing football every day, which was always my dream, but I missed home. I missed my mum. I wanted to be back in Cambridgeshire, but with the support of her and the club, I actually phoned my dad and asked him to speak to Cambridge United to say, like, my son's at Man United, but he don't want to stay there. He's homesick. Will you take him on? And my dad, without me knowing, told the guy that spoke to Man United about it, said, look, he's really struggling here. And to be fair, the way that Man United supported me then and made me feel like I could get through it, the support of my mum, my dad, and I got through them first 2 weeks, and I'm sure a lot of the lads were feeling the same, because it is a massive step at 16. Obviously you're still a kid, you're doing something completely different, and after them sort of initial challenges within the first couple of weeks, it was probably the best 2 years of my life. I was out all of them boring lessons at school, I was playing football every day, I was with my mates. It was an incredible experience, and I absolutely loved being a YTS there. And that was, like, after that 2 years is obviously where they make a decision whether you're going to become a professional or you're going to have to find another club and whatnot.
And then what was that like? You'd obviously been very successful within the YTS system, got offered a pro deal, which must have been amazing. And then you're in the big pond then with the big boys, and that must have been an incredible experience to be around the likes of Beckham, Scholes, etc. Like, just you must have been living your dream once you'd settled, had the success, and then got offered the pro. It must have just been fantastic.
Yeah, so like when I'd signed, I was one of the last to be offered a YTS. So when I left school, it was sort of up in the air. I certainly weren't one of the top players. They had all the lads that were playing for England schoolboys, England under-16s and whatnot, and I was sort of on the cusp. I managed to get the YTS, which I was delighted about, and then when I got up there full-time, I started doing really well and probably excelled in my first and start of the second year. So when I turned 17, there was me and another lad that got offered a pro contract. We was on, I think we were on 36 quid a week as apprentices, and I signed this contract and I was on 500 quid a week, and I thought I was an absolute multi-millionaire. I was absolutely buzzing. I'd never seen money like that before in my life, and I signed that contract. Obviously gave me great confidence to do that. When it came to training with the first team, it was something I was so uncomfortable with, but I didn't see myself as someone that could be around these big stars, and it made me feel really uncomfortable. I remember sometimes the first team coach, if he needed a couple of bodies, he'd come down and sort of look up to see who was about and say, "You're with the first team today." And when I saw him about, I'd sort of hide in the boot room or hide in the toilet so I wouldn't have to train with the first team, because it did make me feel so uncomfortable doing that. And I don't know what the right word to use is. I didn't feel I was at that level to train with them. And I thought, what if I make a mistake in that? I was really confident at that stage with my peers and my teammates that I was playing with, but was really scared about training with the next group up. And it probably only happened twice during my apprenticeship where I did train with the first team, and I did quite well on both occasions, but I was really uncomfortable in that situation. Then at the end of my apprenticeship, I went home for the summer back to Cambridge for the 6-7 weeks that we had off, and thought I'd made it. I'd signed me pro, I had me £500 a week in the back pocket, and didn't treat myself like a professional footballer. I went away with my mates to Ibiza and learnt a massive lesson that summer that if you want to be a professional footballer, then it's full year through. You ain't got time to lark about in the summer for the full time, sort of go out drinking with my mates, thinking I was Billy Big. I won't say the word, but I was having myself massively. Went back up to Manchester and didn't perform at the level that was expected of me for that first 3 months of the season. I didn't really train with the first team, in the reserve team group. Did make my debut in that time in a Worthington Cup game against Aston Villa at Villa Park, but was nowhere near the first team. Then it was that Christmas when the club said to me, like, we need to get more from you. We think the best way for you to develop is to go out on loan. And that's when I went out to Royal Antwerp, to Belgium, and was out there for probably the next 7 or 8 months playing out there, which was probably the best thing that could have happened to me at that time.
Do you mean just because you were able to knuckle down, get your head down and just sort of focus on football because you're in a completely different culture?
Yeah, I just needed to play. I got in the reserve team at United quite young and probably played as many reserve team games as anyone else, but no real closer to the first team. What going to Antwerp allowed me to do is to take me out that comfort zone of playing reserve team football, just training it every day for a reserve team game for being in a proper football environment. I went to watch a game before it decided if I was going to sign or not, and they had a cup game, and I went and watched, and the atmosphere was crazy. There was all them smoke bombs in the crowd. The fans were crazy, and I thought, I want to do this now. I want to be playing in front of a crowd, not in front of a man and his dog at Gig Lane in Bury on a Tuesday night playing a reserve team game. So it was something that I was absolutely buzzing for. There was a couple of my mates already out there from my youth team that were already at Antwerp that they'd sent out on there already. So it was just an opportunity to go and play, and I was buzzing for it. I went out there early in the January of that season and spent the rest of the season at Antwerp.
What did you notice was the biggest culture difference from being there to in England playing?
I don't know if it was the culture, but you just sort of felt invisible, as it were. I felt that the pressure of being at Man United, or that sort of label of being a Manchester United player, didn't really matter out there. You were just another player, as it were. Obviously, I was on loan from Manchester United, but I just felt a huge amount of freedom, both on and off the pitch, really. It just felt like I was in a different world. I'd obviously never lived abroad before. It was something very different, and it just gave a real sense of freedom, and also a sense of growing up a little bit. At Man United, had everything done for me, living digs, got my dinners cooked for me, had lunch there, like everything that I needed was there. Here I had to manage myself a little bit better and sort of understand that the people don't always speak English, and sort of make it. But I quite like that, the fact that you couldn't really understand anything. I weren't given as much detail to go and play football, because it was quite free to go and express yourself and go and play. And it was just like a fantastic city to live in terms of, for us three lads, 18, 19 years old, going out on the town in a different country. Like, it was a real eye-opening experience. But on the football pitch as well, it weren't development football anymore. This was, you had to win to get a result, for the players to get their bonuses. It was like proper football, and felt like you're in something that really mattered, in terms of a proper game with 10,000 fans there every week watching you play.
So after the loan at Antwerp, Chadders, you had a couple of loan spells after that. It was quite an interesting move, I'm led to believe, when you actually played for Reading under Alan Pardew, and you kind of crossed paths with Sir Alex, as it were. I think he wanted you going somewhere else, was it? And you ended up sort of manufacturing a move to Reading off your own back, but that come at a little bit of a cost, I believe.
Yeah, so I came back from Antwerp. I was gutted to leave Antwerp, because I thought I'd just be going back to the reserves at United, and I was absolutely loving it out there, doing really well. Went back to United and quite surprisingly found myself in and around the first team. So the loans out to Reading and Burnley happened sort of after a period within the first team at United, when I knew that my time at Man United was coming to an end. It was about finding a different direction in the game, really. But the Reading one, he kept telling me that he wanted me to go to Cardiff, and my missus was eight months pregnant at the time, and we wanted to go back down south, and Reading weren't that close to Cambridge, but certainly closer than Cardiff. So Lenny Lawrence, who was the gaffer's mate, kept phoning me up, and I kept blanking his calls. And then I'd see I didn't really see the gaffer all that much, because he was in his office, but every time I'd walking down the corridor, I seemed to bump into him, and I was thinking, how's my luck here? And he'd say, why aren't you picking the phone up to Lenny? You make sure you phone him back today. He wants to take you to Cardiff. And I'd say, I really want to go to Reading, gaffer. I've spoke to Alan Pardew. He was a really impressive guy. I spoke to him on the phone. He went, so you ain't going there. I promised Lenny, you're going to Cardiff. You need to sign for them tomorrow. So I just left it at that. Then I spoke to, continued blanking Lenny Lawrence's calls. Spoke to Pards again. And he goes, come down tomorrow. I said, we'll get it all signed and done. So I said to my missus, I said, we need to go down to Reading to the stadium tomorrow. We're going to sign there, and then we'll go back to Cambridge. I'll drive into Reading, stay over if I need to the odd night. So I plucked up all my courage, went to Carrington that morning, knew the gaffer's there. First thing, he's there at 7 a.m, so I knew he'd be there. So I was there at like 7:30, 7:45. Went and knocked on his door, said come in. As soon as I see him, it looked like he had the ump about something anyway. And I said, Gaffer, I'm going to go to Reading. He goes, no, you're not. You're going to... I said, Gaffer, I want to go back to Cambridge. Mrs. Pregnant, I'm going to go back to Reading. Sort of left it there. He went, oh, do what you want then. So I thought, I'm quite happy with that. So I got in the car, drove down to Reading, got to the Majeski Stadium, went in the Gaffer's office. Gaffer's got a message from the secretary at Man United to phone Alex Ferguson up. So me and my wife sit there, wife's like ready to drop with our first child, and I'm sat in his office. He said, oh, I've got a message. He said, got all the paperwork here, just need to get that signed. He said, I've got a message to phone up Sir Alex. I'm thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen here? So then I've sat there with the missus, he's on the phone, and Pards just sat there, and I can hear a voice in the background. I can't hear what it's saying, but Pards' face has just gone, like he's having a pop at Pards here, and I'm thinking, this is all going to fall through now. And he goes, come off the phone. I mean, he'd not even said a word the whole phone call. He goes, right, I've spoken to the manager. He said, you're more than welcome to sign here, but they ain't going to pay you.
Really?
So obviously Reading were a championship club. I was on a decent contract at the time at United. Pards said, like, we can pay you half your money. So I was thinking, sat there with my missus, looking at her, thinking,
she's not happy with you.
Well, that's what I mean. I can't read the situation at all, and I'm thinking, I can't go back to United because the Gaffer's going to go mental at me. So I've just decided to give up loads and loads of money just to stay there. So then played the rest of that season, earning half my money at Reading, went back to United, and like the Gaffer, seen the Gaffer back in pre-season, obviously still knows that I'm not going to play for him, but I need to find somewhere to go. And he pulls me in his office. He goes, he said, I loved what you done there. He said, it shows how much that you love football, that you gave up that money just to play football. So I know what I'm going to do for you this season. So I'm mates with the Burnley manager as well. So I'm going to send you on loan there, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to pay you all your money. So I managed to get all my money in my last year against Burnley, but it was like both them loans were really good experiences to go away and sort of find a different pathway, knowing that I'm not going to have a career at Manchester United.
Like you said, what you realised that your time at Man.U was kind of coming to an end. So that's when you were exploring different options. Do you think if you'd have still seen a little bit of a future at Man.U, you wouldn't have challenged Sir Alex and you would have just gone to Cardiff, or you were just going to do that anyway? Yeah,
I think when the season that I played, sort of the 2000-2001 season, when I was in and around the squad, I mean, I didn't set the world on fire, but done fine, had some really good performances, made a difference when I come on in games, come back for the next season and sort of suffered with some injuries sort of with my hips and pelvis, which resulted in having surgery. And when I come back from that surgery, the one thing that I could always do and that I was exceptional at was run incredibly fast with or without the ball. And I could sort of know in myself and my body that I'd lost a little bit of that. And when you're at a club like that, if you lose a little bit of something of what you had, particularly when you're probably striving to be at the level of the other players anyway, you sort of noticed. And I had a really honest conversation with the manager before any of the loan spells to Reading or Burnley, where he said, like, you're not going to have a career here without that sort of lightning pace that you had before, and it's going to be real hard for you to have a career sort of right at the top end of football, as it were, which of course was sort of hard to hear, but you also appreciate the honesty. And I think when you recognise it yourself as well, you can see you're not having the same effect in games or training, that you sort of accept that to a certain extent. So in terms of, if I thought I was still had a career at Manchester United, I probably wouldn't be getting sent on loan to Cardiff anyway, as it were. So in terms of that was a decision that I made because I wanted to be closer, because as I say, Reading's not that close to Cambridge, but closer to home to be with my wife and to be with our firstborn child at the same time.
Going back to Manchester United, Chadders, the captain there was very, very similar to Sir Alex. He was a winner, sometimes a bit of a controversial figure, and I believe he was quite good with you and looked after the whole team. And was he someone that you car schooled with at times at Manchester United? And what was Keano like to be in a car with and be alongside?
Yeah, like an incredible man in terms of he really looked after the young players, the way he spoke to us off the pitch. On the pitch, it could be a living nightmare at times because it was so intense. The environment at Manchester United, obviously, when you've got a winning environment, that means training at 100% every day, and obviously you've got some of the best players in the world there. And the thing with the skipper is he couldn't lose, and if he did and he was on his team, there was hell to pay. So I remember one of my first sessions back from Antwerp, I was sort of one of the top boys at Antwerp. I could not train at 100% every day, still be in the team, still being one of the better players. I went back to United, was a bit nervous, obviously, and with the first team, we always used to do possession drills, small-sided games. I remember first session possession drill, I was on Roy's team, gave the ball away a couple of times, and he just exploded, went mental at me, calling me every name under the sun, telling me to raise my game, and I was thinking, flipping heck, I think I'm better off in Antwerp here. And then after the training session, he pulled me in a dressing room and just explained, saying like whether that you were a young kid who's just come back training with the first team, or you're David Beckham or Ryan Giggs, I expect the same standards from everyone, and if you're not playing at them standards, I'm going to tell you in no uncertain terms, because I want to win, and to win, we all need to be at the top of our games. And you sort of understood where I played with many players over the years who are just moaners, really, and whatever you do, they'll moan at you, they'll moan at everyone. But with Roy, it was different because you understood exactly why he was doing it. I think with some players that moan all the time, you just end up switching off. With him, you'd always listen, and you'd know if he's telling you, then you need to raise your game and you need to do something different to get going. So he was like an incredible bloke in terms of, I couldn't drive at the time, and on the odd occasion where he'd pick me up from my flat, take me into training, he'd usually be quite jovial in the morning, but if he'd lost a training game, quite grumpy in the car on the way home. But in terms of a skipper, an inspirational figure, he was on another level, really, to anything I've ever experienced before.
Did you go to any games with Keano in the car? Any first team games? Did he take you along?
Oh, the one, yeah, I know what you're getting at here. The Manchester derby, yeah. So I remember playing in. I actually started that Manchester derby. Started the game. I think we'd already won the league towards the end of the season. It was a scrappy old game. I think it was a draw. I think it was a 1-1 draw in the end. But that was obviously the day where Roy snapped Alfinger, Haaland in two. I think a bit of revenge after Keane done his knee over at Leeds. And he'd pick me up that morning to take me to the game. And I'd come off. I got subbed off after about, I didn't know me, about 50, 60 minutes. Might have been more. I'm not sure. But not really recognising the fact that obviously I'd travelled in with Roy. And then went back in the dressing room after the game and he was nowhere to be seen. And then I thought to myself, how am I going to get home? So then I've got changed. And then I'm the only person, like the whole Old Trafford is deserted. Everyone's gone. This must be about 2 hours after the game, and I'm thinking, where is he? So I poked my head out, walked to the car. His car was still there, so I thought, I'll just sit in the dressing room, see what happens. And he come in there, just poked his head in and just said, come on. So I just grabbed my bag, followed him, sat in the car, sat in silence in the passenger seat of his car till we got to outside my flat, dropped me off, and I remember him just saying, if you go out tonight, be careful, and then just got out the car and left. Yeah, that was all that he said.
Did much happen after that, like in the week when you went to training, or with what he did to Haaland? Or
no, I think it was just carry on as normal, really, in terms of what it is. Obviously, it was there's no denying it was an awful tackle and something that you shouldn't do. I think it is accepted, not so much these days, but back then in terms of he was a player that played completely on the edge in terms of what was right and what was wrong, and that was one of his greatest strengths, greatest assets, really. So in terms of, I don't know, I would imagine there would have been conversations with the manager, Sir Alex, but it certainly weren't me that was saying, what are you doing?
I was at Old Trafford a couple of weeks ago on a stadium tour, and in the museum I saw a bright yellow greeny top that said I've had a pally on the back of it. And I don't know, you may be able to help me with my memory here, but I think your name was on the back of that. Is that right?
Probably on it multiple times. So we used to, on a Friday, we used to play like a little 5-0, old v young, and then the winning team would vote for the worst player for them to have to wear the top that I assume you would have seen saying, I've had a pally. I think Gary Pallister is someone I didn't train with a huge amount. He was slightly before my time, but I don't think he was the best trainer. A fantastic player in the matches, but I think it was called when he didn't play particularly well in training that you had a pally. But yeah, I remember wearing that top a few times. It was obviously very embarrassing when you were picked. Usually the young lads wouldn't get it because it would be people that the other team know that would wind them right up. So because we were young and it was the easy option, it was usually someone. When I first started playing, we still had sort of Giggsy, Butty and all them were still in the young team, incredibly enough. So it would usually be one of them two who it would wind them right up if they were given the I've had a pally top.
What was David Beckham like to play with?
He was, without doubt, the hardest working player that I've ever played with in terms of not just on the pitch, sort of he'd work his socks off every day, but what he'd do away from when the session finished in terms of the repetition with the free kicks, with the crosses, he was so driven to do everything right. I've obviously played on the right wing as well, and we used to do crossing practices and sort of come out to us when we put crosses in. I'm pretty sure when I was crossing for the strikers, there was a bit of a groan because it weren't Beck's putting it on a sixpence for him. But he was like quite a quiet guy, really. But like bleep tests, running, everything. He was the fittest player and the hardest working player, which says a lot considering the players that he was there with at that time.
With regard to your position in Chadders, like you were obviously an exceptional striker growing up. You played a lot of your career, especially at Manchester United, and when you went on these loans, was on the right. Was that due to your pace, and they kind of transitioned you into that position? Was it?
Yeah, 100%. I think in my first year, growing up as a schoolboy at United, sort of under 15, under 16, I'd play as a striker. When I moved up as a YTS, we had 4 different strikers, and in terms of my skill set and exactly what that was in terms of being fast, running with the ball, they moved me out on the wing, and then that's where I stayed, really. I probably didn't excel as a striker on my back to goal in terms of getting hold of the ball, passing it off and that sort of thing. And when I moved out on the wing, I found that it really suited my skill set really well, and was really pleased to sort of given that opportunity, and really made me a career in the game, really being moved as a winger. You
felt that was a good move for you because you'd been so successful as a striker. Whoever made that decision, whether it be Sir Alex or the coaches at Manchester United, that was a wise move to play you in that position.
Yeah, 100%. I think I would be quite surprised if I would have had a career as a centre forward, considering sort of my build and the way that I played the game. I think in terms of the wide positionings, both the right and the left wing were somewhere that I probably ended up enjoying playing more. I love playing as a striker, as a schoolboy, because I just score loads of goals. Obviously, it gets harder and harder as the level of opposition gets harder. So it gave me an opportunity, to really excel in them wide positions as a young player growing up.
We've spoken a lot about Sir Alex and his influence and the detail that he went to, which made him so successful. We obviously know everyone about the hairdryer treatment. What was the worst hairdryer moment? Not necessarily you, but you'd seen him dish out.
Yeah, I think when I was coming through, I think speaking to a lot of the other players that were there with him for many years before, that he'd sort of calmed down a little bit and wasn't as ferocious in terms of his telling offs and what he does. I think for me, there was one occasion where I went out on a Christmas do and had a reserve team game the next day, and just my luck, it all kicked off at the Christmas do, and there ended up being photos of the lads in the newspaper the next day, and you could just see my face behind everyone else sort of following along. He's gone in the next day before the reserve team game, and he's absolutely furious because some of the lads have been fighting. Something's happened anyway, and he's I'm just probably the least of his worries at that time. But again, walked past him at the wrong time on the sort of in the corridor, and he said, "I saw you were out as well. That's 2 weeks' wages. I'm fining you." And I thought, "Oh, how's your luck here?" But that day was actually when we were having our Christmas dinner, like for lunch at Carrington. We used to do it every year. And the staff would serve the players their dinner. And it was quite a grumpy Christmas dinner because obviously the manager was fuming because the Christmas party all kicked off. I just sat there waiting for one of the coaches or staff to deliver me my starter of a bowl of soup, and saw the manager walking towards me, and he just banged my bowl of soup down on the table, like bits coming out of it and that sort of thing. And he just said, "That's going to be the most expensive bowl of soup you ever eat." Brilliant. But yeah, like in terms of him sort of going off the handle, I remember I was on the bench at White Hart Lane the day when Spurs were 3-0 up at half time, United come back, and he just come in. He didn't go mad, but the way, like the look on his face, and all he said to the players was, "You need to sort this out." Nothing else was said, and everyone was just sat there. Then they went out in the second half and banged in 5 goals.
5-3, yeah. I remember that game. Yeah. I remember that one well. So sometimes you didn't even need to go mental as such, just it was enough that he was angry.
Yeah, I think he'd just built that sort of culture by that stage for when I got there, and obviously continued that a number of years post me being at the club, where everyone knew what the standards were and what was expected. I think all that hard work that he'd done in them early years built that environment, that winning environment that obviously was associated with Man United for the time that he was in charge there.
You seem to bump into him at the wrong times on a few occasions.
Yeah, unbelievable, yeah.
Talk to us about, you obviously loved football, enjoyed it, but you had another love, Big Brother.
Oh, God, that's just started again as well, isn't it? My little lad started watching. I hope we don't go the same way. But, yeah, that was probably one of the worst mornings of my entire life. So when we was in Belgium, was the first series of Big Brother, and we couldn't get Channel 4 out there, so I never watched any of it. Then, obviously, that was a huge success. Come back to England, and season 2 was just starting, and I thought, I'm going to get into this. Didn't see the first one, then just got into it on such a deep level. It was madness, really. And I'm watching every hour that God sends of it. I'm watching the show, but then watching the live feed so I can see what's going to go into the show, and then it'll sort of be ahead of the game in terms of what's going on in Big Brother. And then I'm watching it, and it got to the point where because my wife Hayley used to work at the airport, so sometimes she'd work shifts and work through the night. So when she worked through the night, I'd set my little bed up on my sofa and just watch it, like straight through. Like if something, obviously it's quiet there, so if everyone was asleep in a Big Brother house, I'd have a sleep as well. And if someone spoke, I could hear it, and I'd wake up, see what was going on. There was this morning where my missus got home, so she just come in and said, "What are you doing?" I sort of got the ump a little bit. I said, "What are you on about?" She said, "It's 10:30. And I thought, oh my God. I mean, I'm meant to go to training at like 9:15. And it felt like I just wanted the ground to swallow me up. I think, what am I going to do? In my mind, I'm thinking, I'm going to get sacked here. This is my football career over, because I was watching Big Brother for 24 hours a day. So I thought, I'm going to phone my mum. She'll know what to do. So I phoned my mum, and I've sort of got a bit of an idea what to say. I said, I need you to phone up Carrington for me. Talk to the lady on reception and say, Luke's not been in because Hayley, my missus, has had a fall. So She said that. She phones him up, said, Luke's had to take Hayley to... I mean, it's awful what I'm saying here. Luke's had to take Hayley to A&E because she's fallen over. So then I've gone in the next day. Exact same thing happens as well. Walk straight in. The manager's walking. And he looks at me and like really sort of empathetically saying, what happened? How is she? She all right? I went, yeah, she's all right. She had a fall on her wrist. I said, it's okay though. It's not broken. It's okay. Then Hayley used to, because I couldn't drive at the time, Hayley used to take me to all the games, and she used to get all dressed up, go in the players' lounge with all Posh Spice and all the wags and all that, putting on a nice outfit. But for the next 3 weeks, I made her wear a tubey grip. So if it was ever questioned about her hurting her wrist, she could say, oh yeah, it's still a bit sore. I mean, I took it way too deep.
Does Sir Alex know that that's the case now? Or?
I've not seen or spoke to the gaffer since I left the club, so no, I'm pretty sure he's probably not that interested in my podcast and whatnot, so I'm hoping he still don't know about it.
He can't find you no more.
Yeah.
We're going to get back on the timeline, Chadders, and you joined Burnley on loan. How did you find your time there?
Yeah, loved it. Loved my time there. It was a real different experience, very different to, obviously, Man United. The training ground weren't great. It was a real sort of all pulled together sort of mentality. You didn't get anything done with you. We'd all be up the baguette shop at lunchtime to buy ourselves some lunch and that sort of thing. But really enjoyed sort of being part of a different dressing room. It was a lot of fun. There were some real big characters there. It was the manager was Stan Turnant. He was a very, very big character as well. His coaches, it was proper sort of old school in terms of what it was like. We used to have a kangaroo court every Friday morning where you'd sort of accuse people of doing stuff, and if the jury found them guilty, they'd have to pay £2 regardless whether it was true or not. So it was like a real enjoyable season. Really enjoyed my time there.
I've seen in a couple of your podcasts, because I've watched all of them and your interviews, that you mentioned Glenn Little a few times. Talk to us about him, because I know you've got a lot of respect for him.
Oh yeah, he's a top man. He was like a brilliant character, fantastic footballer as well. But him and Robbie Blake, who was used to be at Burnley as well, they were thick as thieves together, and they were incredibly sort of funny. But they both had a way of winding up the manager like none other, really. The gaffer used to lose it with him on a regular occurrence. They used to get in all sorts of scrapes with him, that's for sure. But two of the best players that I've ever played with post Man United, but exceptional characters as well. Glenn never had a bad game in his career, though. He'd sort of come off, anyone had a go at his performance, I done all right. Thought I'd done all right, mate.
Did he? I had a stinker and still says he's played well. I love that. I like that. That's good. Pardew had you at Reading, and then he obviously showed interest and you joined him at West Ham. And there's a funny story about this as well, isn't there, with Pardew had a few beers, said you were getting a contract, and then you didn't.
I know, he gave me a contract. I had the contract. I signed a new contract in the season we got promoted. Then we was at the end of season. No, sorry, we beat Preston in the playoff final. Then had some party. We got I don't know if we was on the bus or flew back. We had it out Dumno way. It was at some posh hotel out there. I had a few beers and that. Mrs. was there, a few friends, and Gaffer had obviously had a few drinks, sort of come over to the table, and he said, back where you belong, back in the Premier League. He said, this is your time now. I thought, I wasn't expecting that. I'm buzzing with that. I got back to pre-season. About 5 days in, I was sent to Stoke on loan and never played a game in the Premier League. But it was really enjoyed my time at West Ham, like incredible football club, and to play at like an iconic stadium like Upton Park was a brilliant place to play football, and the atmosphere was electric there. And to be fair to the gaffer that season, I've never seen anyone in my experience come back from the pressure that he was under that season, where the sort of the crowd had turned. It was a toxic environment at times, but he stuck to it and sort of managed to sneak in the playoffs at the end of the season, and then to to go through the semi-final against Ipswich and to win the final against Preston was like an incredible job that he done, considering the pressure that he was under at parts of that season.
Who was at West Ham with you at that time? What players were there?
So it was a squad that should have done better. It was a squad that probably should have won the league next season, in terms of, obviously, Teddy was there, Bobby Zamora, Marlon Harewood, Matty Everington, Nigel Rio-Coker, Mark Noble was coming through then, Sergi Rebroff was there as well, Christian Daly, Thomas Repka. It was a really strong championship squad that probably did underperform in terms of the results, but got the job done in the end.
What was Thomas Repka like? He looked a thug to look at.
He was a really nice guy, but like a bit of a loose cannon on the pitch, where you're one of them where you're always thinking he's one moment of madness away from a red card. But obviously a good footballer, international footballer who done well for West Ham throughout his time there.
Brilliant. And then it was Stoke after that, Chadders, is that right? Stoke City, yeah?
Yeah, so I went on loan to Stoke. The assistant manager at West Ham, Peter Grant, told me that it's an opportunity to go and get games. To be honest, I never really liked sitting around at a club if I weren't going to play, sort of thing. West Ham went and signed Yossi Benayoun, who was an absolute player. I've had a couple of sessions with him and realised I ain't getting in a team ahead of him, so thought Stoke would be a good opportunity. I was a bit sort of down about the fact that at West Ham I was back home. We'd got the little and he was growing up, and Stoke, it sort of meant going up there. Do we move up there? What do we do? It was only a loan move to begin with, but went up there and sort of really enjoyed it. We had a manager, a big Belgian guy called Johan Boskamp, who sort of knew me from when I played at Antwerp. He was another really big character, and it was somewhere I enjoyed going and playing football. Probably the biggest challenge was just sort of the geography of it all and sort of how it had worked best from a sort of a family situation, really.
What was Boskamp like? He was a bit sort of a colourful character, wasn't he? And coming from Holland and managing in England, what was he like?
Yeah, I loved him because he seemed to like me, but it weren't the same for a number of the players. And he was really sort of, he could flip at any moment. He could go off on one, and that resulted in him falling out with his assistant manager to the point where they wouldn't speak to each other. But because they were both under separate contracts, the assistant manager wouldn't go, so he stayed. So it was at a point where we were on the training ground, but the manager and assistant manager didn't speak to each other at all. It was a strange old setup. But the guy in charge of it all, the head of football, was John Rudge, who he's an absolute legend. Yeah, he's a great guy, but he didn't really know what to do with the situation, so it just sort of played out over 4 or 5 weeks where you'd have the coaches not speaking to each other or anything.
Did that affect the performance, Chadders? Like, with that going on, that disharmony between the manager and the assistant?
Yeah, I mean, we were sort of a mid-table sort of team. I wouldn't say... I think it ended up resulting in both of them going because it just got to an unmanageable situation. I think in terms of performance, I wouldn't say there was a huge amount of difference. We knew what our jobs were. The manager would still manage the team, as it were, but it was one of the strangest situations that I've encountered.
Yeah, sounds utterly bizarre. All the relocating, Chadders, you ended up coming back closer to home, and it was Norwich City that you got the move from Stoke to Norwich, so you're a lot closer to home, and a good club at the time, and you got to play with Dion, I believe, who you'd watched as a youngster and was one of your heroes. That must have been a special move, and you must have been pleased to be, as you say, back in East Anglia.
Yeah, without a doubt, I was absolutely delighted when the Norwich move come off. They came in when Nigel Worthington was manager, and Tony Pulis was the manager at Stoke, and I sort of spoke to him saying, I'm not settled here. My wife and kids moved up, but wanted to go back down again. I've got this opportunity. And he said, there's absolutely no way I'm letting you leave because I want you here. I want you to play, which I sort of took on board and tried my best for the club. Then sort of he said, let's keep talking about it. If it gets to the point where... said I'm not, Tony Pulis was an another incredible bloke who I'm really fortunate to have played over, and he said, you work as hard as you can for me over this period, let us get sorted, let me find replacements and whatnot, and we can sort of revisit it, which is exactly what he did really. So I carried on, then Tony Grant took over at Norwich, who was Pards' assistant manager at West Ham, and then the move came off, absolutely buzzing, went down. Debut was against Ipswich at Portman Road, big game, absolutely buzzing for it. Scored a goal, thinking this is what a move, dream move here, back in like not far from home. Fans all singing my name on my debut. Then 10 minutes to go, got barged off the pitch into one of them furry TV microphone things that have gone down. I'm thinking, I'm struggling. I was winded. And that's the worst feeling in the world when you're winded, trying to get your breath back. Got my breath back. Had a problem with my shoulder as well that kept dislocating. That had sort of come out its joint. So I've sort of managed to push that back in myself. And then I remember Adam Drury, another Cambridge boy, saying to me, don't look down. So automatically I looked down. I got a big gaping hole in my knee, and I thought, looked down, immediately felt sick to the stomach sort of thing, thinking that looks absolutely awful. Then the next thing I know, I'm on a stretcher. I've got the Ipswich fans giving me pelters. I remember clearly I'm walking that corner where past the Norwich fans that are clapping to behind the goal where the Ipswich fans are, and one of the stretcher bearers has half dropped the stretcher, so I'm sort of clinging on as it's staying on. Went into the treatment room. I've got the Norwich City doctor who's quite an old guy trying to stitch up my knee, and like the hole's so big and it's just absolute agony. He's making it feels like he's making it worse what he's trying to do. And I remember just on all the gas and air and that sort of thing in a Ipswich General Hospital, and I was in there for 3 days while they sort of tried to clean up the cut. There was a couple of micro fractures in the knee, and it was just what went from a dream start turned into an absolute sort of disastrous start.
What was the big man like, Dion, having, like you say, watched him as I did back in the day under John Beck and the glory days, and then, he's your teammate? That must have been a bit of a surreal one for you.
Yeah, it was incredible for me, like a dream come true. I think I bored him to death, speaking about him every day, trying to ask him questions about the glory days at Cambridge. But he was he's a brilliant bloke, brilliant man, and I think in terms of sort of he's coming towards the end of his career then, but such an inspirational figure in the way that he speaks, the way that he treats people. Again, like when I speak about sort of Sir Alex and the way that he was a master of that, of building relationship. Dion was a very, very special person. Plus, he signed my old Cambridge shirt for me as well, which was a big plus. Got that framed.
Brilliant.
You then moved on to MK Dons, where you made over 200 appearances. Was your most settled club in your career in terms of how many appearances you made. Talk to us about your time there. Me and Scotty on the way here this morning were saying that you played in that 10 role. I remember watching you on TV playing for them, and you played with loads of freedom. I know you mentioned that earlier on in the interview, where you like playing with freedom. Did you feel that at MK you had that license to get in that 10 role? It's a little bit lower the level of what you had been playing. Were you able to just enjoy it and express yourself?
Yeah, I think in terms of like the MK Dons, I loved playing for MK Dons. Like you say, I was there for the longest period of time. Probably more importantly than anything else, stayed fitter and was out on the pitch more than anything else. So I would have loved for that time at MK Dons to be the time at Norwich, but the injury to start with, and I just never got going there. Then had a number of managers, never sort of enjoyed playing when Glenn Roeder took over, when I was sort of fit and ready to go, and then sort of spoke to my agent and said that I've been here for a long time. Club's been absolutely brilliant towards me, the way that they've treated me, considering I've hardly kicked a ball for them, but I just feel like I need a new challenge. I need to get somewhere else. And I sort of said, can you speak to MK Dons? Because it's not far from Cambridge. It's 50 minutes up the road. It's a lovely stadium they've just built. It just seems like a nice place to go and try and play football. So he spoke to them. They were interested. and went in there and sort of hit the ground running in terms of probably playing in more of a wider position, but the way that they played under Di Matteo was sort of finding pockets inside and sort of playing from that area. Started really well. I was on loan at the time, sort of talking about making it permanent, and then done my knee in training with a tackle with Dean Lewington and was out for another 2.5 months, which I thought, that's blown it now. It's back to Norwich. More time on that flipping treatment bed there that I've been sat on for the last sort of 2 years or so. But then they said they still wanted to make the transfer permanent, so signed for them while I was still injured, and then went in there and stayed fit, played a few positions. It was probably when sort of the Paul Ince came in where I started playing 10 in most of the games, and just found it suited me really well in terms of getting on the half turn, being that awareness. All them times at Man United are having drummed into you, need to check your shoulders all the time, know what's behind you, and found real good joy and really enjoyed playing there for the 5 or so years that I was there, and they were brilliant to me, and I like to think that I would have done a good job for them as well.
It was Di Matteo first, wasn't it? Then Paul Ince that you played for. Was it in that order?
Yeah, Di Matteo was the manager. Then he got the job at West Brom, and then Paul Ince took over, and then Carl Robinson took over from Paul.
Obviously, Di Matteo went on to do really, really well. Could you tell that he had that in him? Obviously, he played at the top level, but what was he like as a coach?
Yeah, he was like a real sort of one of the coaches that keeps his distance from the players, sort of didn't have huge relationship with the players, but sort of a real professional manner about him. He had Eddie Newton, his ex-Chelsea teammate, working with him at the time. He'd done a lot of the sort of tactical stuff. You could tell Robbie, he's obviously got great experience in the game, sort of an air of sort of confidence about him, which as a way of giving the team confidence as well. So I wouldn't say this guy's going to go and win a Champions League with Chelsea, but you knew that he had belief in himself that he could be a top manager.
And Paul Ince, I know that you've said in previous interviews that he joined in training once and was quality, and you had a good way of dealing with that.
To be fair, he used to join in training all the time, and he was far and away still the best player. He was a big hero of mine growing up, Paul Ince. Like watching, I loved the way that he played. I loved how wholehearted he was. I loved the way that he tackled that game for England, where he's got the cut head against Italy when the team gets through to the World Cup. And he used to absolutely, like, training was like, it was crazy. It was like he'd demand. People were smashing it. Like, people were getting injured left, right, and centre in training. We played on a Friday when we used to do the little games, and it was like warfare. There was people getting smashed all over the place. But I remember one of his first sessions, we were doing little 5-0s, and he's sort of chopped someone, about to finish it with his left foot, and I've absolutely wiped him out. And I'm like, to be fair, I do like a tackle myself, sort of in training, something I enjoy doing, and sometimes get a bit of stick about it myself. But I thought, I think I broke his leg or something. He's just like not moving. So I've like gone and said, sorry, Gaff, you're right. He turned around, he went, I effing love that. And he had a big grin on his, because he loved he loved tackling people and loved getting tackled as well. I really enjoyed working under Paul. Obviously, he was someone that I played against and someone that I had a huge amount of respect for. I think maybe because of it, like, he was, without a shadow of a doubt, a world-class footballer, and probably found it quite challenging dealing with what we were, a League One squad that didn't or couldn't produce maybe what he expected. But me personally, I loved Paul Ince being my manager.
And then the next move was obviously the best move of your career. And just talk before, I don't know the details, obviously, but there was something in your contract, I believe, at MK that said there was like a release clause that if you went to Cambridge United, that they were going to allow that. Is that right?
No, so there wasn't anything in the contract as such. It was just obviously it was something that from the age of 6 years old and that first trip to the Abbey Stadium that I wanted to do. It was my dream to play for Cambridge United. That was what it was from the outset. Don't get me wrong, I'm incredibly grateful to have played for a number of other clubs, but it was always to do that. That would be the ultimate, to play for Cambridge United. And I worked really hard for MK Dons, had a really good relationship with every single person at the club, and got to a point where I knew that to play at any sort of standard or level, or to do a good job at a high level, I didn't have that long left. The old hips weren't what they once were. The ankle, like the joint, I was getting older in essence. And obviously we had a young lad coming through at MK that played my position called Dele Alli, who was sort of not a bad replacement if I was to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
So I went to see Carl, who quite coincidentally was with Gary Waddock at the time, who obviously ended up at Cambridge, and I told Carl what my ambition, like what my dream was when I was a child, and I think I communicated that with him quite well, quite emotionally in a way that I said it. Obviously, they didn't have. I was their player. They could quite easily have kept me there. I was still doing a decent job for them, but he said, I can't believe you just said that. I've never had a conversation like that in my life. He said, I'll do anything I can to help you fulfill that ambition. So from there, sort of one thing led to another, and I ended up probably 3 or 4 weeks later than we wanted it to be. I was all set to make my debut against Luton at the Abbey in the league game a few weeks before, but then it all got done, and it was something that I'm obviously incredibly proud of, to have done, well, to have lived what I dreamed to do as a child.
So Cambridge were obviously you manufactured the move, Chadders, but it was Richard Money, the manager in charge at the time. So he obviously obliged and was more than happy, to welcome you with open arms and have you as part of the squad to try and get back into the Football League.
Yeah,
is that the case?
It was I don't know. It was a strange set of circumstances, really. I remember my initial contact was with Jez. Had a chat with Jez, who said that he'll speak to the manager, and it was like Rich is a great guy, got the club promoted, but probably very different in terms of any other manager that I'd ever worked for before, in terms of sort of the way that he spoke to people, the way that he treated players. And Cambridge was very different to anything I've ever experienced in terms of Jez and Rich at the top of the tree, what it looked like, what the structure of the club was. But it was something that, I was very grateful to have been part of a Cambridge United team that got promoted back to the Football League, which was out of this world, really.
Scotty's done some podcasts, and I remember him chatting with Robbie Simpson, and he spoke a little bit about Richard Money. What did you mean there about how he liaised with players or spoke to players and people?
My first interaction with Rich, and I got on absolutely fine with Rich, there's no issue whatsoever, but I remember, but there's probably something for me to think about and my sort of ego at the same time as well. I remember going into Clare College, Richard was there, and for some reason, I don't know why, I thought he might be quite pleased to see me. I've gone into the sort of, that little bit where you change into the pavilion, and Rich is there, Knights is in there as well, Knights on his computer, and they're putting bets on. Wow. And I said, I think that's what they're doing. So I said, Luke Chadwick here to see you, and he looked at me and went, Jez isn't here yet. You know Robbie, don't you? You can speak to him till Jez gets here. So I'm speaking to Knights. I've not seen Knightsy for a few years, but I'm chatting to Knightsy. But Rich is just in the room at the same time. He's not gone anywhere. So he's had to wait for Jez to arrive until he's going to have a conversation with me. But like I say, everyone's different. It was just a strain. There was some things that were very, as I say, very different. Who am I to say what's right and what's wrong? It was very different, is what I'd say.
Yeah, there's no red carpet out for you, was there?
Certainly not. No. Certainly not. I don't know why I was expecting it, to be fair.
No, as supporters, we were, absolutely delighted. We'd watched a career and, proper Cambridge lad, and it's special when you've got someone that's affiliated with a club and it got that passion and heart, and it must have been special when you first pulled on that shirt and you was out on the Abbey playing there. It just must have been, I know how much Cambridge United means to you, and to play a part in getting back into the Football League and scoring at the Newmarket Road end, you're ticking a lot of boxes, so it must have been a dream, really.
It was absolutely incredible. Like playing the first game, I think it was Welling at home. I don't know if Cunny scored a penalty. I don't know if we won 2-1 or 1-0, but I'd done a double session that day at MK because we didn't have a game. Then the move got done really quickly and I was dead on my feet. Last 5 minutes, where the cramp comes and you think, I'm absolutely scrambling here. But like you say, to score at the Newmarket Road end, to be on the pitch at Wembley, obviously the Old Trafford, and going back there, playing for Cambridge, it worked out. Like when I look back now, I couldn't be more grateful to have had that opportunity in terms of representing the team that I loved when I was growing up as a child.
Like rolling back the years, the Manchester United game on the Friday evening in front of the cameras, multi-million-pound players come at the Abbey, the Falcaos, Di Marias, and little old Cambridge United sort of doing a job on them, and could have even nicked a win.
And I remember all them games like you spoke about earlier, that Bristol City game, the Millwall FA Cup game back in the 80s, them sort of the Crystal Palace game, going to Arsenal, that sort of thing. But I remember sort of warming up for the Man United game at the Abbey, and I've never, ever seen it, like all the times I've been there, I've never seen it bouncing like that. And like an hour before kick-off, the crowd was amazing, and it was the fans done so much that night to help get the result that it did. And if only Coles could finish, we would have won the bloody game as well, wouldn't we?
I said that to Scotty the other day, so on Wednesday when we see him, I'm going to give him some stick, but he reckons he missed it on purpose to get the replay.
To be fair, he has done well, because we wouldn't have got to go to Old Trafford if he did put that away, so maybe give him the benefit of the doubt. But he can't finish. No, to be fair, he scored a fair few goals last season, didn't he?
Yeah, he can. He's got a big head, so he does get that. Does get that on the end of him sometimes. Was there a belief in that game, Chad? As obviously it ended 0-0. Was there a belief within the squad that we could spring a surprise and get a draw or even a win in that game against Manchester United?
I think there was belief that we could get a result. Obviously, they weren't doing brilliantly well at the time. I think maybe the best that we could hope for was drawing the game. I don't think we had huge belief. We probably done better in terms of getting closer to winning the game than I thought, or we thought we probably would. But it was, like, I think a massive part of that. Obviously, we knew it was a huge game, but just feeling that atmosphere inside the stadium that evening was something like that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up.
You've had a terrific career, but you refer to that goal, was it against Southport you scored? And, we had a little watch of it last night. We were doing a little bit of our sort of due diligence and, just watching the celebration in front of the Newmarket Road end, and, you're running back to halfway line still.
And you didn't stop smiling.
No.
The game was kicked off and going again. You were still smiling.
Yeah, I was absolutely buzzing. I'm not a particularly emotional guy, but when I was that bit where I'm sort of running back for them to take the centre again, I thought, I'm going to flipping cry it. It just felt, even as a 33, 34-year-old man, like that was the accumulation of everything that I'd done in my career, and sort of that dream of scoring up that end of the pitch. And it was a really special moment to have scored that goal there.
I think it's something we can relate to. When I come in this morning, Dazza Cokes was giving me some stick because I'd done the same. There weren't a crowd there that night. It was just my family. But I scored for the Rezzies at the Abbey, and I felt probably the same as what you did there. It's a special feeling, isn't it? When I was in the youth team, a lot of the lads, Chadders, didn't really understand why Cambridge was my club. They come in, we had lads from Nottingham Forest, Norwich, and they all support Man.U, Arsenal, Chelsea, whoever. And they didn't understand that I fully supported Cambridge United, but it's a special place, and it means more, doesn't it? When it's actually your team, and you'll be able to tell me more so than me. You've played at some of the biggest stadiums in the world against the biggest teams, but that goal at the Abbey, where you first watched football, was special.
Yeah, it like you say there, you're completely right. It does feel different. I remember just sort of every time I was out on the pitch playing for Cambridge United, and it felt completely different. It felt so surreal that I was on that pitch where I was a little nipper. I was at the side of the pitch watching the players play, and it does feel incredibly special. Where at the same time that can sort of put more pressure on you to try and do more than than potentially you're able to do. But it was to wear that shirt was, like I say, I don't ever feel that proud of myself, because it's just the life, innit? We all live our life. It's what we do. But it does make me really proud that I was the one that made that happen. And it purely for me, in a selfish way, I'm proud of myself that I did that for myself, and I had the opportunity to do what I always dreamed that I'd do.
You guys played a big part, like, you know, yourself. We spoke about Josh Coulson, and that squad got us into the Football League, and Cambridge United are in a great place now. You must enjoy, you know, seeing the club back where it belongs in League One at the moment. You got Mark Bonner, who obviously bleeds amber and black, Paul Barry, Cambridge United supporter. You know, there's redevelopment going on at the Abbey Stadium, which has been unheard of, a £3 to £4 million training ground at Clare College. So it's just we're all Cambridge United supporters here, but yeah, so it's a terrific place the club is in at the moment. You must be sort of happy, proud, and look on with pleasure seeing the club, you know, flying high and possibly looking to push on and do even better in the future.
No, without a doubt, and everyone deserves great credit. The way, as you said there, that the club has moved on. It's a very, very different place for the club that I signed for 7-8 years ago, whenever it was now. And it's great to see that progression. I think in terms of my eyes now, just to see the team win at the weekends as a supporter, it's nice just to be able to do that. There's no sort of worries about what's happening behind the scenes, because it seems like they've sorted that out really well, and the club's in a real strong position, and long may that continue.
So after you left Cambridge United, Chadders, you got offered a role, I believe, within the academy, but you sort of openly said before you felt a little bit lost, and it wasn't sort of quite for you. Why was that? Like, what happened there?
Yeah, I think I probably loved the club too much, in terms of I loved playing there. Probably the experience of playing there, and sort of and this is probably the wrong way of saying it. It's like never meet your heroes, as it were, in terms of it, because it can turn out to be a disappointment. And probably playing for the club was very different than I expected, but that's all on me really, because I was lucky enough to enjoy playing for clubs where sort of I don't know, spoke of in a real high way. I'm not saying I weren't treated like that at Cambridge United, but it was very different to, like I say, to anything I'd experienced before. Then going into the club as a coach, in every aspect, and this, I'm not trying to be disrespectful here whatsoever, I wanted it to be so much better than it was. I wanted the experience that I had as a player, that I had working for the club. I thought it was going to be very different to what it was. And I sort of went into the club as a coach, and probably more so than a player, you see how the club is and how it's all done. Now, obviously, I'm quite spoilt because I come out of Manchester United, that of one of the greatest clubs of all time, with unlimited finance to do what they need to do. I probably expected everything at Cambridge to be a bit better than what it was, in terms of everything and the way that everything's done, where potentially it wasn't like that. Again, that's on me completely, and not detriment to anyone at the football club. And probably working there probably took a bit of my love away from the club, because I was in it. When you're in something, it's very different to being on the outside and supporting a football club. And I didn't want it to affect my experience of the club. Both my children were there as well. I didn't want it to take away from their experience of being at the club. And I didn't really agree with a lot of what academy football is, in terms of, in my eyes, the kids going way too early. You shouldn't be taking kids at 7-8 years old to drive an hour and train 3 times a week. I completely understand why every single football club does it, and this is not specific to Cambridge United, but there was something about academy football that I didn't like. There was something about myself that I didn't like. I wasn't a football player anymore. I couldn't control what I was done, and I'd find myself shouting, moaning at referees on the side of a under-16s football game, moaning at players because they weren't doing things of the standard that I expected them to be at, and sort of, to a certain extent, got sick of the sound of my own voice and didn't like the person that football was making me become. Probably at the same time, quite challenged myself with my football career coming to an end and not dealing with that fully emotionally and not in a good place mentally to do the best work that I could in terms of the development of young people. There's parts of the jobs that I really enjoyed, and I really enjoyed working it with the young players, but I was probably more interested in their development of human beings than developing them as footballers, because that's so much more important. Because for one, not many of them are going to have the opportunity to make it as footballers, because that's what the stats would suggest. Yeah. But also, football's got a way of taking you away from who you really are when you're in it on a daily basis, and trying to sort of help them understand themselves as human beings, to both go into football if they're lucky enough to do so, but also for their life, really. Because I know that I went into football, all I knew about myself was me as a footballer, and no understanding as me as a human being and how I feel about my thoughts, feelings, my emotional intelligence, my inability to be vulnerable at any situation because I saw it as a weakness. So I think these are lessons that I learned very much after coming out of football and then stepping away from Cambridge United. And I just knew that wasn't the right journey for me. I had no interest whatsoever in being a first team manager. I didn't enjoy the person I was as a football coach, so made the decision that I don't want to do this anymore. I need to find something else a passion that I'm going to enjoy, that I'm going to love, because it came away from that whilst coaching.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Chad. As I didn't really know that, to that full extent, so I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Understandable as well. Made a lot of sense. Made a lot of sense, for sure. Because it can get like that. And you can, for me, I find in people's football journey that you believe that because what you've done all of your life is play football, you have to take that route. That's your only route. So it's nice, and probably leads on to what we're going to talk about now, which is Football Fun Factory. Big shout out to all the guys at Football Fun Factory for allowing us to come here today and film at your HQ. This is HQ, isn't it, for you guys?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
What do you do here, and talk to us about Football Fun Factory?
Yeah, so when I sort of made the decision that I was going to step away from professional football from Cambridge, I didn't really know what I was going to do next. Obviously, I know James and Johnny really well. I worked with Johnny incredibly closely within the academy at Cambridge, and I sort of told him that I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to stop. I'm going to have a think, maybe take a bit of time out and find another calling, whatever that may be. And quite to my surprise, he said he's doing the same thing. And I obviously knew about the Football Fun Factory. I couldn't miss it with James chucking it all over social media all the time, but probably didn't have a real understanding of exactly what it was and what Johnny and James were planning on doing. So I ended up doing a podcast because James and Johnny had started doing a podcast to grow the awareness of the Football Fun Factory. And on that, I really sort of learned exactly what the Football Fun Factory was. And it really sort of reminded me of my earliest experiences playing football, where it wasn't about developing as a footballer. It was purely about playing with my mates, having fun, enjoying myself in what was, luckily for me, a really fun, enjoyable environment. And what the guys spoke about so passionately was doing this on a mass scale. So football is purely done. People are attending football. The kids are attending purely to enjoy it. They're all going to develop at football because when you do something, you're developing in it. But this is something bigger around every child, regardless of their ability, having the opportunity to play. So that really captured my imagination, really. Also my sort of passion for human development as much as football development, and how these sessions are structured in terms of really focusing in on life skills just as much as football skills. Because I think in the education system itself, obviously the teachers, those in charge, have to do a huge amount of work on the maths, English, the core subjects are obviously imperative in children growing up, but probably the most important lesson or the most important subject you ever learn about is self, because I think you need to understand yourself to be able to do anything. To be able to love yourself allows you to then go and be able to love other people on a deeper level. Until you really understand, yourself, I don't think you're ever going to reach your full potential. So the way that the Football Fun Factory is trying to teach children about themselves, because that's when you learn the most, isn't it? When you're children, you're like sponges, you take all that information on board, and really supporting their growth as human beings was something that, again, I'm hugely passionate about, and sort of perhaps this is the right opportunity for me. So decided to come on board as a head coach, franchisee, set up programs in Melbourne, where I used to go to school, Bassingbourne, where my kids go to school, and built a Football Fun Factory community in that area. And it was so different in terms of coaching. Obviously, when I'm coaching the under-16s, under-18s at a professional football club, it's intricate. Well, hopefully it was really in-depth in terms of trying to get out some real technical and tactical information to help the kids develop. But here it was all about coaching for smiles and the kids having fun, and probably gave me real reward in terms of a community that has given me so much, obviously growing up in that area, trying to give something back to that local community and sort of giving children the opportunity to play football, which was something that I really enjoyed and felt like it weren't work in a way. Like, I'm really enjoying this. This is fun. I love it. The kids are smiling. It's not about them becoming the next Lionel Messi. It's about them using football, and us as coaches using football as a vehicle to develop positive life skills, even more so probably than football skills.
Yeah, the football will come, as you said, Chad, as if you're good at football like yourself, that will come, but you're integrating, like you say, life skills, developing with people, teammates. Whether you work later on in life in a team, you've got to delegate, you've got to get on, you've got to problem solve, and if you've got passion and enjoy what you're doing, it becomes less like work, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like you mentioned there, them social aspects are more important than anything else, regardless of the ability of the child. Like I said at the start, everything is around communication, and to be able to mix with people socially at them youngest ages is so important to aid in their development. And football is just a byproduct of that. And we use the passion that we've all got for football to try and use it on an even deeper level than trying to get the next kid into the Cambridge United Academy or the Peterborough, whatever it may be. And like you say, the children that are gifted enough will get that opportunity to do that.
And kids need to be kids as well. I keep referring to a conversation that I had with a lad who I met in Perth. Funny enough, I flew there to film a podcast, well, 2 podcasts. And I was chatting with a guy who had been at Liverpool from the age of 6 to 16. And he said by the time he got to 16, he had offers from Wigan and Everton to go there. But he chose to go to America and just kind of cruised his way through. He said, but because he'd done it from so young, when he got to 16, he got released. He didn't have that go again. He was exhausted of it. So it's finding that balance between, if you're 6, 7, 8, you're still kids, right? You still got to go and have a burger and play football. It's not at that high level just yet. And I think that's really important. I think with social media and I think the world's fast paced now, Chad, is people get caught up in that. And I'm almost, as a coach in an academy environment, a coach that I'd like to think where I remind and go, right, yeah, he had a bit of a stinker. He's 8 years old.
Yeah.
Like, he's allowed to.
No, yeah.
And if he wants to run off and play in the park with his mates after, don't stop that, because one day he's going to be old like us and not able to do that.
100%. And I think I've got no issue with football academies whatsoever. I do think that children going in so young, when they have to travel a long distance to get there, I think that is a problem and something that needs to be rectified, because 9-year-old children shouldn't be travelling a 2-hour round trip to training and back 3 times a week, because you think about the education, what they're missing out on, and it's too much for me. But I think where the problem is within football academies as such is it becomes all about the destination. It becomes about being a professional footballer, when in reality we all know that doesn't happen all that often. But what gets forgotten is a journey, which children in these academies get incredible experiences to do incredible things, but I think they can get left behind and forgotten about and not used as a tool for the development for other sort of areas of life and whatnot, because it just becomes, if you're not a footballer, then you've failed, when in essence that couldn't be further from the truth. It's what you take out of that journey which can lead to hugely successful and fulfilling lives, away from just the fact that you might become a professional footballer. And I think clubs have a habit of sort of, at 9 years old, it's sold a dream to a certain extent that you sit in this system for X amount of years and professional football's going to come out of it, where we need to be more honest and transparent of what you will get from the journey. Is this: you're going to get some incredible experiences, you're going to learn some brilliant life skills, and come the end of it, whichever way a decision of 2 or 3 people might go, that doesn't judge you as a human being, because too many kids are coming out the game with, like your friend that you spoke to there, he was exhausted at the end of 16 years by under 16 because he didn't get the scholarship or whatever it may be.
Yeah, really well said. Listen, I've enjoyed that. That's been quality, mate. Thank you so much for taking the time and telling us your story. And thank you again to everyone at Football Fun Factory for allowing us to come and film here and making us feel so welcome.
My pleasure, mate. Great to have you both.
Chadders, thanks very much.
Well done, Scotty.
Thank you.
Quality stuff. Right, legends, if you're at this point of the video, that means you're enjoying my content. So make sure that you hit the subscribe button, you hit the like button, and you hit the little notification bell so you don't miss any of my up-and-coming videos.